You say that in 2001, the bigger thing for Australia was not so much 9/11 or the Tampa matter, it was the quiet revolution in our population policy. I think you say that, do you not?
Yes, and I still believe it. I think what happened on the 1st of July 2001 will have a far greater impact on the future of Australia than either Tampa or 9/11.
Could you explain to us the point you made in that chapter about how important 2001 was? What was that all about?
Well, it was predominantly driven by a great deal of debate that was taking place in around 1999, 2000, between Treasury, the Immigration Department, various demographers in Australia, and the Productivity Commission, which dragged in Peter Costello and Philip Ruddock into the discussion about population ageing and what the projections for Australia look like from an ageing perspective. And that worried both Costello and Ruddock a great deal. And it led to some fundamental changes in our immigration policy, which essentially said overseas students are potentially a significant export growth industry, but more importantly, where we can get overseas students to study the right courses, they become eventually the ideal migrant, having developed their qualifications in Australia and having acquired skills relevant to Australia's needs, they would make the ideal migrants. So on the 1st of July, what we changed was both the way we processed overseas students and the pathway we provided them to permanent residence.
So they became part of the composite area for future Australians.
Exactly. And in fact, they are now the dominant source of future Australians, overseas students. And more importantly, what they also do is slow the rate at which the population ages. So if you look at the projections in 1999, in terms of the rate at which we would age, that has changed very significantly, predominantly because of what the Howard government did on the 1st of July 2001.
So this contrasts us with, say, Japan and China, where they have very small families, particularly in China, where it was compulsory under the government to have only one child. They're not able to replace themselves, but we can.
China has some particular difficulties. The one-child policy led to a predominance of males over females, with the obvious implications in terms of fertility. They have a very low fertility rate. They abolished their one-child policy, and the assumption of the Chinese government was abolishing that policy would suddenly lead to a surge in fertility. It did nothing of the sort. Fertility continued to decline in China. China has minimal immigration. Indeed, it has net emigration. More people leave China than arrive every year. And as a result, it is facing an extraordinary rate of ageing and population decline. Demographers, even in China, are now saying that China's population by the end of this century will be half what it is today.
Is the Japanese population falling at a bigger rate than the Chinese population?
At the moment, yes. But as you project forward, China's decline will accelerate faster than Japan's decline.
And culturally in Australia, how do you think the students fit in with the general Australian population as they become Australian citizens?
On the whole, the evidence seems to suggest they fit in quite well, in that having studied in Australia, having gone to an Australian university and become immersed in Australian culture at a relatively young age, helps them in the settlement process very significantly. What it enables them to do is get reasonably good jobs quite quickly, almost as quickly as Australian graduates do. And that enables them, I think, to become part of Australian society much more quickly than if you bring someone directly from overseas who may have studied at an overseas university and not be as familiar with Australia.